Welcome to the More Than Fitness podcast.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Minisode number 134. On today's Minisode, we have a wonderful guest question. As I mentioned to you guys in the last Minisode, I'm going to start taking your all's questions more often if you have them for these Minisodes. It could be about anything. It could be about training, nutrition, life, etc. Whatever you can think of, I want to hear from you. And to submit your question, you can just click the link in the description. All right. The first question is from Sarthak. I think I'm saying that correctly. Sarthak, thank you for your question. They ask, machines versus free weights. Which one is more effective? This is kind of the age-old debate that people like to go back and forth on, and you'll have, bodybuilders and powerlifters fighting against each other. Bodybuilders saying preaching about the uses of more machine-based type stuff. So things like plate-loaded machines, or maybe it's a pin-loaded machine, or something like cables, right? That's more typically thought of as like bodybuilding-focused type workouts. And then you have powerlifting, which is all about, barbells, maybe dumbbells, and that would be mostly it. But the answer is, as usual, it depends. It's gonna depend on your goals, but we'll just, for sake of simplicity, we'll keep it for the norm here on the More Than Fitness podcast, and that's for people primarily probably trying to gain muscle and lose fat and be really fucking awesome people, right? So the first two, this will definitely cover, and I guess the latter, the being really fucking awesome, that can be a subsidiary effect from this. I think subsidiary. I think that's the right word. So free weights versus machines, they're both useful. They're useful for different things. For machines, what's interesting is I think a lot of people figured this out with the pandemic. You don't actually need a ton to get in, maybe not the best workout, but at least a workout. And you can do your best for the most part with even just, a couple random dumbbells. Or if you have a barbell and plates, you're set. You can do mostly everything. That said, you also realize the shortcomings that even having dumbbells or maybe plates and a barbell, that you still have some shortcomings of exercises that you want to do to hit certain muscle groups or to challenge a certain movement. And that's kind of the main thing here. And so I'll kind of go over the pros and cons of both. But the best program, as you'll understand by the end of this, is going to have, ideally, you're going to have both. You're going to have probably the majority of your workout come from free weights. But there's going to be certain things that machines and things like cables that they can do that the free weights can do, but maybe not the most effective way or the safest way to elicit that same response, right? So for free weights, some of the things that I have down here is that they're typically most effective per rep. And so for people who are workout minimalists, or maybe you only have 30 minutes to work out, it's probably not good to go over to the pulley station and just start doing some cable exercises, because you're not getting the biggest bang for your buck with each rep. If you do something like a deadlift, the reason why the big movements are the big movements is for a reason. It's because you can get a complete total body workout and hit multiple different muscle groups at the same time. And then that's, you combine those together, you can get a really high quality total body workout, within 30 minutes, just by doing a couple sets of, let's say, deadlifts and bench press, right? You're mostly covering the entire movement or the entire body with just those two exercises. Of course, there's a little bit in between, but for the most part, you're going to cover a lot with just those. Whereas if you just did something like a cable row and leg extensions, it's not going to cover that. So it's more effective per rep, and then this also leads to it's also more efficient. So it's more time efficient, alluding to the last point, I just realized I'm basically repeating myself. More effective per rep and more efficient kind of go hand in hand. But also from a standpoint of whenever I have clients who come to me and they say, hey, maybe I gave them a few more machine-based exercises because maybe they told me they really like machines. So I'm going to include more of those in their training program. But then they say, hey, what do I do whenever it's a really busy gym? There's not many machines open, or I can't superset these certain exercises. And I'm like, hey, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to mimic the same movement, but we're just going to use dumbbells. So I would dumbbells or kettlebells. This is why kettlebells are also a great type of free weight movement, because they're so versatile, right? There's so many different things that you can do with them to get in a great workout that don't require getting a bunch of different machines, right? And so what I tell the client is like, hey, grab a couple of course, whatever exercise it is, grab the dumbbells that you need for that exercise and just kind of go to a corner or a free space and just knock out the exercise there. Obviously, if you have to use a bench or something like that, it's more difficult, but for the most part, how can we figure out how to make this exercise just completely dumbbell based or even body weight based, right? So even if the dumbbells are really taken, the barbell benches are taken, the machines are taken, you can, if you're trying to hit chest, you can always do push-ups, right? So just how can we make it as minimalist as possible? That's what free weights are great at as well. The other thing is going to be the obvious argument that I think a lot of people tend to use, and that's just the natural paths of movement that you can use with things like dumbbells, right? Whenever you're doing a chest press or something, the dumbbells are allowed to move in different degrees of freedom as you're going down and up, and that can typically prevent injury. It's going to allow for other stabilizer muscles to be used. Again, you're not in this fixed path that can be caused by, say, like a Smith machine or something like that. You're challenging other muscle groups. You're probably challenging your core a little bit more. And again, it's just more effective per rep at hitting more muscles. And this also leads me to it probably also allows for greater increases in total strength simply because you are challenging so many muscle groups at the same time, and you are challenging your stability a little bit more than maybe something like a hack squat, for example, or a leg press. Your stability isn't super challenged within those movements. Whereas if you have something like a barbell squat, that's one of the most stabilizing one of the most stabilizing exercises you can probably do. If you can do a deep squat with heavy weight on your back, it's like you're going to have pretty damn good stability to do that. People talk about stability and think about stability as these, like a single leg RDL or something like that, or doing shit on a Bosu ball. It's like, no. Stability is whenever you can take your 1 rep max on a squat, do a deep squat and stand back up and have the bar path, pretty stable and not do any big jerky movements or anything like that. It's like you've got to create a lot of force and also have a lot of stability within the same movement to fluidly complete that rep. And so, yeah, you want to work on your stability. You get really strong on these heavy movements. Think about also like a overhead press, like a shoulder press with a barbell. You're going to have pretty good stability with that, or a front squat, right? That's also going to be really difficult to do if you don't have good stability. So all of these things combined probably lead to better total strength overall. Okay. And then I think those are the main things for free weights that come to mind. I'm trying to think. Probably should have done this before I started the podcast, but I wrote some down, but I was wondering if there's going to be any more that popped in my head. But for the most part, I think that covers the majority of the benefits from free weights. And then for machines, right? I think the first thing this goes, some of the downfalls of free weights or I'm sorry, some of the advantages of free weights is also, or I'm sorry, I have said it right. Damn it. Some of the downfalls of free weights are the benefits of cables and machines. There we go. Got it. So what I was saying, so think of like the Smith machine, right? You're not going to use as many stabilizer muscles as you would with a typical bench press where you have a free range of motion. However, if you have joint pain, or if you're specifically trying to just overload the chest or a certain muscle group, this is where things like cables and machines can be very useful, because let's say you have joint pain or something and there's a particular muscle group that you want to challenge, but whenever you use a barbell or dumbbell, it tends to get really achy. But whenever you use a machine, for example, and it keeps you in this certain path, this certain movement, it locks you into that, and you don't have to worry about stabilizing or anything else, well, then you can really overload that muscle well without having to worry about your injury, or you can work around the injury or any joint pain that kind of comes with that. The next point is going to be what I alluded to in the beginning with the shutdowns. So cables and machines typically make things easier whenever it comes to certain movements. And I think the one movement that probably everyone thinks about whenever you think about shutdowns is something like some type of pull down movement. So unless you can do pull-ups, which most people can't, at least do them correctly and effectively. Most people can't do pull-ups. So it's just like, then you're kind of shit out of luck whenever it comes to really targeting some type of pulling movement, really effectively doing a vertical pull for the most part, and typically trying to target the lats. It's just very difficult to do, even with bands and things. It just doesn't feel as good as, say, something like a lat pull down does, right? Or using some type of cables or some type of machine. For the most part, yeah, it's hard to mimic that with just dumbbells or barbells. You can do rows and things that can kind of target your lats a little bit more. However, I think for a complete back development and a complete repertoire of natural movements and movements that you probably should be completing regularly for overall health, just general joint health, musculature, et cetera, it's probably a good idea to have some type of vertical pull in there. And it's just hard to do without having some type of pull down, unless you can do a variation of a pull up, right? Or chin up, et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, I think the most important thing here is that you can overload a position more effectively with cables and machines than you can with dumbbells and barbells, right? So I think one really good example of this is going to be leg extensions. And then going back to the shutdowns, it's like, how many of you maybe tried to create your own leg extension? And it's just very, very difficult to do so. And it's for a reason. But the great thing about leg extensions is that it's one of the few movements that actually challenge or place a lot of tension on the quads whenever they're in that shortened position. Whenever you lift your legs up, the VMO, right? It's in a really shortened position that is difficult to reach with anything that you use with dumbbells or barbells. As far as safely and effectively overloading the quads in the shortened position, the leg extension is very, very difficult to beat. And unless you can mimic that movement with something else, which is, again, very hard, well, then, the machine's probably going to be best there. And then another thing to think about with these is overloading muscle groups I guess I just kind of did. So you can overload the muscle in the shortened position. So think about, that's what I did with the leg extension. But think about cable flies versus dumbbell flies, right? So cable flies, you're going to have the tension coming from the outside of you, basically, right? And so whenever you bring your arms together and you bring your hands closer together and your elbows closer together, it's going to shorten your chest, right? It's going to shorten your pecs, and most of the tension is going to be highest whenever your chest is in that shortened position. So that's whenever the most tension is going to be placed on the muscle in that shortened position. But then as you let your arms go back out, right? That's whenever the tension is a little bit it's lesser, right? Because whenever you're going out, the cables are getting closer to the pulley system, and some of that tension is going away, right? Now think about the reverse. Think about with dumbbell flies. Where do you think the dumbbell flies are going to have the most tension, whereas the cables will not, right? Whenever you have dumbbells, so as you have the dumbbells, you hold them up. Let's say you're holding them up just like you would in a press, right in front of your chest, right close to your midline. All right. So then gravity is going to be pushing down towards the floor, but that's not going to place a lot of tension on your chest whenever they're pressed up like that. It'll be some on your shoulders, some on your chest, but the most tension is going to be whenever you're in that very lengthened position and your arms are spread out completely. I'm trying to show the video podcast and also explain it to you guys on the audio, but whenever your arms are fully stretched out and the dumbbells are in that, or whenever your chest is in that lengthened position, that's where the tension is going to be greatest. So it's going to be greatest in that lengthened position. And so you can have a combination of, okay, maybe you want to really push the chest and also the pec minor with cables and in that shortened position. And then maybe after you do that for 4 weeks, then you do dumbbell flies, and then or you just do a different fly variation within your program, and then you use dumbbells. And so it overloads the muscle in the shortened position and in the lengthened position, but you use different modalities to reach that goal, right? So that's basically the main difference there. All right, and I realize I'm at 16 minutes, but that's the main gist. That was the last point that I wanted to make with machines. Ideally, you can use both. They both have their purposes. If you want to bias one or the other, it would definitely be towards free weights. But again, there's certain things machines can do that free weights can't. So that's it. Sarthak, thank you so much for your question. Again, if you have a question, submit it in the description below. And that's it. Thank you guys, as always, for listening and for watching. See ya.